When we open a school book, we are told that the story of Brazil begins in 1500, the moment when Portuguese caravels touched the shores of a new world. But how can you discover a land that was already teeming with life? A land where, long before any European set foot, entire civilizations had risen from the earth, flourished, and left their mark on the land, the rivers, and the very soul of the forest. By 1500, millions of people already called this vast territory home. They spoke hundreds of different languages, lived in thousands of villages and cities, and had created complex social, political, and spiritual systems. Their histories were rich, their knowledge profound, and their relationship with the land intimate and transformative. The idea that Brazilian history begins with European arrival is not merely incomplete, it is a profound erasure. It is the silencing of centuries, perhaps millennia, of human achievement, struggle, innovation, and legacy. The true story of Brazil begins long before the first sails appeared on the Atlantic horizon. It begins with the first footprints pressed into the soft soils of the Amazon, the first fires lit under the canopy, the first seeds carefully planted by hands that understood the rhythm of the earth. Dense, endless, and often portrayed as a hostile wilderness, the Amazon today is seen as one of the last untouched frontiers of nature. But what if this vision is wrong? What if the Amazon is not merely a natural wonder, but a cultural one as well? A living monument, not just of biodiversity, but of human ingenuity? Long before European chroniclers wrote of jungles and savagery, the Amazon was a thriving human landscape. Villages, towns, and even proto-cities dotted the riverbanks and the forest interior. Complex societies flourished, mastering agriculture, engineering waterways, shaping the forest itself to suit their needs without ever breaking its delicate balance. Their achievements were not immortalized in massive stone structures or glittering palaces. Instead, they were woven into the very body of the land, in the fertile soils they created, the domesticated forests they cultivated, and the intricate networks of roads and canals that stitched their world together. To uncover the true beginning of Brazil, we must tear away the myths. We must venture beyond the colonial narratives and listen to the whispers carried by the trees, the rivers, and the ancient soils. This is not just the story of survival in a harsh environment. It is a story of mastery, of adaptation, of civilization in its purest, most harmonious form. It is the story of a people who did not conquer the forest, but who grew with it, reshaped it, and in doing so, crafted one of the most extraordinary human landscapes the world has ever known. A masterpiece not built of stone, but of life itself. And it begins not in 1500, but thousands of years earlier, when humanity first wove its destiny into the heart of the Amazon. For centuries, the Amazon has been cloaked in myth. To early European explorers, it was a terrifying, green abyss, a land of monstrous rivers, lethal creatures, poisonous plants, and endless dangers. A place so harsh, so unforgiving, that only the bravest or most foolish dared to venture into its depths. In the popular imagination, the Amazon became a green hell, a wilderness beyond human reach, where nature reigned supreme and civilizations could never thrive. But this vision was a distortion. Not because the dangers were invented, the Amazon can indeed be perilous. But because beneath the vines and shadows, something extraordinary was hidden, the fingerprints of countless human generations who had not only survived the rainforest but had shaped it. In 1542, Gaspar de Carvajal, a Spanish friar, embarked on a journey down the Amazon River. What he recorded would challenge the deepest assumptions of his time, and ours. He spoke of villages stretching for miles along the riverbanks, of bustling towns, of fleets of canoes approaching the European ships. He described a land densely populated, organized, and vibrant with life. Throughout this whole river, he wrote, on the islands and along the banks, and in the interior of the land, there are great numbers of large settlements. Carvajal's words paint a portrait of a living, breathing Amazon, filled with human innovation and thriving societies. For a long time, many historians dismissed these accounts as exaggerations, the fevered imagination of a desperate traveler lost in an alien world. But today, archaeology is proving Carvajal was right. New evidence reveals that the Amazon was home to millions. Complex civilizations developed sophisticated agriculture, built extensive road networks, engineered vast earthworks, and even transformed the soil itself. The Green Hell was, in truth, a garden. A garden carefully tended by ancient hands, who understood the forest not as an enemy, but as a partner. Everywhere we look now, the jungle yields its secrets: geometric earthworks visible from the skies, ancient mounds shaped by human hands, engineered soils teeming with fertility. The Amazon was not the end of civilization. It was the cradle of one. And the myths of hostility and desolation are giving way to a new, deeper reality, one that honors the genius of the people who called the forest their home. The Amazon has long concealed its greatest secret. A secret so vast, so breathtaking, that only now are we beginning to uncover its full magnitude. For centuries, explorers crossed its rivers and hacked through its foliage, searching for myths, lost cities of gold, kingdoms rich beyond imagination. Most returned empty-handed, or never returned at all. And so, the world came to believe the Amazon had no cities, no monuments, no great civilizations. Only endless trees and forgotten rivers. But they were wrong. Hidden beneath the dense, suffocating canopy are the remains of entire urban landscapes. Cities larger and more sophisticated than we ever dared to imagine. The first clues came from the sky. As satellites and drones peered through the treetops, strange patterns began to emerge. Perfect circles, straight lines stretching for kilometers, vast geometric formations too precise to be natural. Archaeologists on the ground found monumental earthworks, vast mounds and plazas built by ancient engineers. Not scattered settlements, but organized societies connected by roads, causeways, canals, and bridges. Evidence of planned cities. Evidence of something far more complex than the isolated villages history had long assigned to the peoples of the Amazon. In the upper Xingu region, in what is now Brazil, scientists have uncovered massive networks of settlements. Each carefully designed, each connected to the others, forming a true urban grid buried under centuries of forest growth. Some of these cities spanned areas larger than many medieval European towns. And these were not mere clusters of huts. They were sophisticated centers of life. There were public squares, ceremonial platforms, defensive moats, and wide streets, all built with earth, the most abundant material in the Amazon. Their scale and precision suggest centralized leadership, advanced engineering, and intricate social organization. What stone was to the Maya and Inca, earth was to the builders of the Amazon. Yet earth is a fragile material. Over centuries, it blends into the landscape, swallowed by vegetation, worn by rain. Unlike stone pyramids, the great structures of the Amazon vanished into the soil until technology allowed us to see them once more. In Bolivia's Llanos de Mojos, LiDAR scanning revealed sprawling ancient cities built by the Casarabe culture between 500 and 1400 AD. Urban hubs filled with monumental platforms, reservoirs, and causeways crisscrossing the savannas and forests. And this is just the beginning. Archaeologists now estimate there may be thousands more undiscovered sites hidden across the Amazon. Entire civilizations erased by time, waiting patiently beneath the trees. The myth of the Amazon as a wild, untouched paradise is collapsing. In its place, a new vision rises: the Amazon is one of the greatest landscapes of human achievement. For centuries, travelers, scholars, and colonizers alike looked at the Amazon and saw emptiness. A vast, untouched wilderness, ruled by nature alone. The vibrant cities and bustling societies that once thrived here had vanished without a trace. But the forest wasn't always silent. Once, millions lived within these green walls. Their voices echoed across the rivers, their fires burned through the nights, their footsteps pressed pathways into the earth. So what happened? What force was powerful enough to silence such a civilization? The answer is written in blood, disease, and sorrow. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas triggered one of the greatest demographic catastrophes in human history. Long before explorers reached the heart of the Amazon, waves of death swept ahead of them, carried not by swords, but by invisible killers, viruses and bacteria. Smallpox, measles, influenza, diseases that indigenous immune systems had never encountered, tore through native populations with unimaginable speed and ferocity. Some villages were emptied overnight. Others struggled on, only to fall victim to renewed waves of sickness brought by each new contact. But disease was only part of the tragedy. Where illness weakened, violence finished the work. European expansion brought enslavement, warfare, displacement, and cultural destruction. Entire communities were uprooted, forced to abandon ancestral lands in desperate flight deeper into the forest. Others were massacred outright, their cities burned or left to crumble under the vines. The very rivers that had once been highways of life, arteries connecting vast networks of settlements, became paths of invasion and death. Over generations, the population of the Amazon collapsed by as much as 90%. The grand cities emptied. Fields of domesticated plants reverted to wild jungle. Roads disappeared under the advancing tide of grain. When later explorers and naturalists arrived in the 18th and 19th centuries, they found a forest seemingly untouched by human hands. And so the myth of the pristine Amazon was born. A beautiful lie, built atop the graveyards of forgotten civilizations. The scars of this collapse are still hidden beneath the canopy. The Amazon's silence is not ancient. It is recent. It is the aftermath of a wound that has never fully healed. Today, when we walk among the towering trees, we are not wandering through pure wilderness. We are moving through the ruins of an invisible world. A world shattered by contact, erased by centuries of forgetting. But not completely lost. In the earth, in the trees, in the very structure of the forest, the ancient voices still whisper. And now, finally, we are learning to listen. The Amazon rainforest, the largest and most magnificent on Earth, is often described as a natural wonder, a masterpiece sculpted by the forces of evolution alone. But that image is incomplete. Because hidden within the Amazon's endless greenery is the undeniable truth. The forest itself was shaped by human hands. Long before the arrival of Europeans, the ancient peoples of the Amazon were not merely passive inhabitants of the jungle. They were its architects. They molded the land, nurtured the soil, planted the seeds of abundance, and built a landscape that still sustains life today. The Amazon is not just a natural phenomenon. It is humanity's greatest, most enduring monument. One of the clearest pieces of evidence for this breathtaking reality lies beneath the surface, in the soil. Scattered across the Amazon basin are patches of earth unlike any other. Terra Preta, or black earth. Where ordinary Amazonian soil is thin and nutrient-poor, Terra Preta is rich, fertile, and bursting with life. It is dark, almost black, infused with charcoal, organic waste, broken pottery, and bone fragments, remnants of ancient villages and sustainable agricultural practices. But Terra Preta did not form naturally. It was created. Ancient Amazonian societies learned to transform barren soils into thriving farmland by intentionally enriching the earth, a process far ahead of its time. They practiced a form of composting, burning organic material at low temperatures to create biochar, which locked carbon into the soil and fed generations of crops. Even today, fields of Terra Preta remain fertile, centuries after the civilizations that built them disappeared. the forest itself carries the marks of its human architects. Studies show that a remarkable number of Amazonian tree species, including Brazil nuts, cacao, and acai palms, are hyperdominant across the forest, occurring far more frequently than chance alone would predict. And where are these trees most concentrated? Near ancient settlements. Near the Terra Preta soils. Near the places where people once lived, planted, and cared for the forest. The Amazon is, in many ways, a vast, sprawling orchard, a massive agroforest cultivated over millennia. A living testament to the knowledge, patience, and ecological mastery of the indigenous peoples who called this land home. Their approach was radically different from the conquest-driven civilizations of Europe and Asia. They did not seek to tame or dominate nature. They partnered with it. They enhanced biodiversity rather than suppressing it. They built landscapes that were not only productive for humans but beneficial for the entire ecosystem. Their cities, gardens, and road networks were stitched carefully into the tapestry of the forest, maintaining a delicate balance that modern societies are only beginning to understand. Theirs was a form of civilization that did not leave scars on the earth. It left life. Today, as scientists peer deeper into the Amazon's mysteries, they are finding that the so-called wilderness is, in fact, the largest human-made garden in history. The builders of the forest may have vanished from history books, but their legacy is alive. When we think of the grand civilizations of the Americas, a few names dominate our imagination. The Maya, the Aztecs, the Inca. Stone cities carved into mountains, towering pyramids reaching for the heavens, these are the images that history has preserved. But hidden beneath the green veil of the Amazon, civilizations just as complex, just as innovative, flourished in silence. Their monuments were not built of stone, but of earth. Their cities did not claw at the skies, they grew with the land. And though time has erased their walls and plazas from sight, their stories are now emerging, more vibrant and awe-inspiring than we ever believed. One of the most remarkable centers of ancient Amazonian civilization was Marajo Island, near the mouth of the Amazon River. Here, by 400 CE, sophisticated societies had begun to shape the land into monumental works of human ingenuity. They built Tesos, massive earthen mounds, carefully engineered to lift their homes, gardens, and ceremonial centers above the floodwaters of the Amazon Delta. Some Tesos were small, serving as platforms for individual families. Others were enormous, the foundations of entire communities. Atop these elevated islands, they erected villages organized with precision, wide plazas, communal spaces, areas designated for rituals and gatherings. Their artistry was breathtaking. The Marajora culture, as archaeologists now call it, produced some of the most exquisite ceramics ever seen in the pre-Columbian Americas. Vessels, urns, and statues adorned with complex geometric patterns and stylized figures, humans entwined with snakes, birds, and spirits, speak to a rich cosmology and an intricate social structure. But the true marvel of Marajo was not only its art. It was its engineering. Around the Tesos, the inhabitants built intricate water management systems, networks of canals, reservoirs, and artificial lakes that controlled floods, irrigated crops, and even supported fish farming. They transformed a challenging environment into a stable, abundant homeland, where tens of thousands thrived. And Marajo was not alone. Far deeper into the forest, along the headwaters of the Xingu River, another complex civilization emerged. Between 800 and 1400 CE, indigenous peoples created vast networks of circular cities, interconnected by roads, bridges, and causeways. Each settlement was carefully designed, built around a central plaza, with communal houses arranged like the spokes of a great wheel. Defensive structures, moats, palisades, earthen walls, hint at political organization and regional cooperation. The largest of these urban networks, known today as Kuhikugu, stretched across 250 square kilometers, housing up to 50,000 people at its peak. Life in these Amazonian cities was sophisticated and balanced. People cultivated orchards and gardens that blended seamlessly into the forest. They fished in reservoirs and rivers they engineered. They built not to dominate nature, but to harmonize with it. Their social systems emphasized communal living, shared rituals, and a deep relationship with the land that sustained them. They achieved a level of sustainability and ecological integration that modern societies, with all their technology, still struggle to replicate. These were not primitive peoples surviving on the edge of a hostile world. They were urban planners, hydrological engineers, artists, farmers, and philosophers. Masters of one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Their cities did not survive in stone. They survive in the soil, in the trees, in the rivers they sculpted, and in the knowledge that shaped an entire biome. And today, as we uncover their buried footprints, we realize the Amazon was not merely inhabited. It was civilized. For centuries, the story of the Amazon's ancient civilizations remained hidden, not only beneath layers of dense rainforest, but beneath layers of misunderstanding. While the achievements of the Maya, Aztecs, and Inca gradually entered the world's historical spotlight, the cultures of the Amazon were often overlooked or misinterpreted. For a long time, it was assumed that the Amazon was simply too wild, too unstable, and too poor in resources to support large populations or complex societies. Its peoples were seen not as builders or planners, but as nomadic tribes surviving at the margins of nature, a view shaped by long-standing assumptions rather than solid evidence. Early European explorers who ventured into the region spoke of vast settlements and populous communities along the riverbanks. They described large villages, interconnected by roadways and surrounded by cultivated landscapes. But many of these reports were met with skepticism back in Europe. To minds trained to associate civilization with stone cities, writing systems, and metallurgy, the idea of advanced societies thriving in the rainforest seemed implausible. Instead, the dominant narrative imagined the Amazon as an untouched wilderness, a frontier waiting to be discovered and civilized. Yet much of this misperception had less to do with evidence and more to do with expectations. The cultures of the Amazon did not leave behind towering stone monuments. They built with wood, earth, and living systems, materials that returned to nature over time. In the absence of visible ruins, many assumed there was nothing to find. But invisibility is not the same as absence. Today, new scientific tools are helping to recover the Amazon's past. Remote sensing technologies like LiDAR reveal ancient geometric earthworks, complex road systems, and settlements hidden beneath the canopy. Archaeologists are uncovering the legacy of engineered soils, sophisticated agricultural practices, and sustainable land management techniques that supported thriving populations. And the oral histories of indigenous communities still living in the region preserve memories of a time when their ancestors lived in harmony with the forest, shaping it with knowledge and care. This growing body of research tells a different story, not one of lost empires, but of enduring wisdom. The people of the Amazon created ways of life adapted to their environment, balancing growth with sustainability, complexity with resilience. Their legacy invites us to rethink what it means to be advanced, and to recognize the many ways that human societies have flourished outside the familiar templates of stone and empire. Far from being empty or untouched, the Amazon was, and still is, a living mosaic of culture, memory, and innovation. The story of its civilizations is not one of disappearance, but of rediscovery. And as we begin to understand what was lost, we are also reminded of how much we still have to learn.